Thank you very much. Greetings to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining in this session today, Leadership Lessons with Dr. Stanley Maposa. I'm Dr. Stanley Maposa, and I'm going to be addressing a subject this morning that I love very much, called blind spots that sabotage organizational culture. If you have been to a driving school, you are taught something that is called a blind spot, and this is something that you don't get to be taught when you start driving, but they just tell you, just keep on checking your mirrors, and some of them, they don't even explain to you why are you checking your mirrors continuously as you drive. It is because there is something called a blind spot, an area in your car where if you are looking forward all the time, you cannot be able to see the other car that comes. So you need to be checking those particular spots behind you to avoid accidents. Most of the accidents happen in that place, which is called the blind spot. And organizations, churches, families, teams are also not perfect places. There is no perfect church, there is no perfect culture, there is no perfect family. One of my pastors, Pastor Ray McCauley, said one day, even if you find a perfect church, the moment you join it yourself, it stops to be perfect because you are not perfect yourself. So somebody not perfect has joined the perfect church and therefore spoils the perfect church. If you join a perfect organization and you're not perfect, then you spoil the perfect organization. So in other words, that simply means that every team, every church, every organization has something that is called a dysfunction. The question is, do you know what your dysfunction is? There are often things that we miss, either because we are focused on the other direction, we are focused forward, and therefore we miss the blind spot, or because we are simply accustomed to the way of using things, and therefore we are desensitized to the potential of becoming healthier. So if we are used to doing things a particular way, then we have a blind spot of new things, of innovation, of new information, and those are some of the things that cause the blind spot. Somebody says every house has a smell, and those that are in it are used the smell. It's only the person that comes in, it's only the visitors that come in that I knew. That is that to tell you that something that is wrong in here. So you need, each and every one of us, to be checking that and maybe allowing others to come in and identify the smell that we get used to in our organizations. In our work with organizations that we have done over the years, we have often found that blind spots in organizational culture are repeatedly identified in all organizations, whether they are big organizations or they are small organizations, or they are organizations at the starting stage or at the end stage. We have discovered a number of blind spots. What often surprises the leaders we serve is that these culture blind spots are not the extravagant employee that likes the perks or the outrageous office antics. Rather, they are small things that they have not been aware of, and that's why they are blind spots. In fact, most of the time, the things that are biggest are not the blind spots. The smallest things are the blind spots, and some of them are as follows. Let me just handle some of the 4 critical blind spots. The first one is called clarity of purpose. The second one is called organizational clarity. The third one is called leadership development, and the last one is team dynamics, and I'll finish from there. Let us start off with the clarity of purpose. Clarity of purpose simply means, why do we do what we do? Why are we doing what we are doing as an organization, as a church, as a company? Why are we doing what we are doing? When was the last time you asked yourself or your team that question? Some ask that question when they started and they don't ask it on a continuous basis. Why are we doing what we are doing? As the organization grows and matures, the mission and the vision gets more and more fuzzy. The mission of the organization gets more dimmer and dimmer as the organization grows. So there's nothing wrong about what is called revision. Re-look at the vision, re-look at the clarity, re-look at the purpose. Why are we doing what we are doing? If you do not keep the mission, vision, and the values of your organization front and center, your team will lose focus and engagement. Having a clear purpose is the foundational building block upon which everything else in your organization culture is built. You have the opportunity to clarify and articulate why you exist and how you move forward in your calling. So when you do so, you provide the plumb line your team needs in order to align and thrive together. So what that simply means is that we sometimes have a blind spot in the clarity of our purpose because we fall into a default mode and we begin to do things as business as usual. I remember this man called Thabo Mbeki. He is the person who started this word called business unusual. What simply means is that on a continuous basis or on a daily basis, you must treat your organization as business unusual, and then you will avoid these blind spots. Let's go to the second one, which is called organizational clarity. Leaders are never as clear as they think they are. Sometimes you think you are clear as a leader, but if you come and stand on the side of the followers, you may not be as clear as you think you are. Organizational clarity is not just about communication. We will get back to that later. But organizational clarity requires a fierce commitment to making sure our systems and processes provide clarity and alignment that remove roadblocks and helps our teams to do their work with minimal avoidable frustration. Chief among the issues that create the blind spot is the non-existent or confusing organizational chart. People do not know who they report to. People do not know who calls the shots. People don't know who has the final saying. The organizational chart is confusing. Many senior leaders I talk to get annoyed by the need for an organizational chart. Where is an organizational chart? Let's leave that one there. The third one is called team dynamics. Do you trust your team, and does your team trust you? Perhaps the last blind spot is the most critical here. In many ways, this is the byproduct of the other three categories. If you lack purpose, it is difficult to find common goals and bonding that takes place in achieving these goals together. If you lack clarity of structure, roles and processes, then your team does not know what to expect and therefore cannot trust the decisions that you make. If you lack leadership development, you feel the organization and the organization is not committed to you. In his book, Think Again, Organizational Psychology, Adam Grant shares that more than 100 studies have examined conflict types in 8,000 teams. A meta-analysis of those studies showed that relationship conflict is generally bad for performance. So relationships are the core of your team's health and effectiveness. Someone said relationships are more important than ministry. So the team dynamics and the trust factor in your team is critical. If you ignore it, you are on a blind spot. Knowing your culture blind spot allows you to specifically address the root causes of the issue in order to build the purpose and the clarity of your team. You do not The last one that I'm going to discuss here is called leadership development. Your most important everyday job is developing your team. While the functional work you do is critical, you need to lead your team to yield greater impact. For most of the leaders, leadership development finds its way at the bottom of the priorities. But we need to be intentional. We need to be urgent. We need to be continuous in investing in people, especially the people that we lead. Development strategies are not limited to books and conferences, but you need to have a system whereby you constantly develop your team, you give them feedback, and they receive feedback from you, and you professionally train them so that they become the top talent that you need for the innovation that you need in your organization. So 4 things as I conclude: a blind spot for every organization, clarity of purpose, organizational structure is not available, it's not clear, there's no leadership development and the dynamics of your team. Thank you very much.
Salibona bazalwa nisapile moyeni nimtumise nubaba. Salibona bazalwani nisapile moyeni nimtumise nubaba. Salibona bazalwani nisapile moyeni nimtumise nubaba. Nimtumiseni, nimtumise nubaba.